Hello and welcome to the Mind Muscle Podcast. Today's Taboo Buster is all about men, and the topic is when men can't cry. I'm super excited and actually very passionate about this topic, and happy to introduce to you all Kevin McNee, Heart Warrior Coaching and Leadership owner. And I will give him the space to really introduce himself to you and explain a little bit about who he is, what he's done, and maybe even a bit of your story.
Thank you, Lauren. It's such an honor that even people want to consider having me on the podcast. It's something I'm super grateful for. So thanks for having me. My name is Kevin McNee, Heart Warrior Coaching and Leadership. I'm on a mission to create a community of consciously aware men that are in touch with their feelings. They can talk about everything that's going on within their own lives, but also within their relationships, with their careers, with everything that's happening. And that's something that's been such a challenge for so many men, myself included, not being taught or shown that it's okay to be open, to be vulnerable, to talk about anything that we're going through, that we're feeling, or even knowing what feelings are. So my mission when I left my corporate job in just about 2021, just at the end of 2020, my mission was to help men, because I was one of them and I was struggling, and I didn't feel like I had many places to turn, and that's ultimately what my mission is. And it's kind of evolved and grown a little bit over the last couple of years to expand, and definitely want to touch on that as we go as well. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for the work that you do and for sharing your wisdom with us today. I wanted to touch a little bit on the men and crying topic. This is such a taboo thing, right? And I've been actually talking a lot about just different generations and how men were kind of conditioned to act. And I feel like what we're experiencing now, and perhaps you can talk deeper on this, is a way for us to all get more in touch with our masculinity, even women, right? And so we're not afraid to really fully own that and then fully step into that. And a part of that is crying.
No, absolutely. And, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that's what I've recognized in doing this work. My whole coaching practice and the men's group that I started is all about healthy masculinity and conscious masculinity. And what I've recognized throughout this journey in working with men is realizing how many women are suffering from the lack of healthy masculinity, and having a space where they can feel safe to be in their feminine and be soft and be vulnerable and open with their partners, because their men, or the men of their past in their lives, have not been able to hold space for that, or to have open conversations, or to listen and truly hear them without being defensive or reacting. Or maybe they were just afraid to bring things up because of something that has happened to them in the past. And that's something that I'm recognizing in doing the work with the men. And that's where my focus was, in helping men become more consciously masculine, where they can be that leader, that warrior, that king, and bring that energy and lean into that confident and courageous space, but also be open and vulnerable to hold space for their partners and the people in their lives, so that their partners, their wives, their spouses, and the women, the collective of females, they don't have to be that uber masculine, play that role, because they now have men that can hold space for them and help them feel safe.
Gosh, I resonate with this so much, and it's so true. And it's nice to have that safe space It's kind of funny you mentioned that because I've always felt in my life, I also coach, right? And I have a similar energy, a similar mindset with my clients to help them really access their power. And I've found that I've always allowed men in my life to be vulnerable and to kind of show that side of themselves, and I've never judged them. And I was that safe space, but in a way, and no one really talks about this either, that can become dangerous too, because then you become sort of like a drug for that person instead of them learning to expand that to every facet of their life and being able to
Yes.
keep that muscle, right?
Yeah,
So,
100%. And that's something too that I talk to my clients about, as well as, well, everyone in my life, right? And that's having, when you open up and share for the first time, especially, and I'm just going to speak to the guys here, when men are supporting and listening and holding space for each other, that's nothing that many of us have ever felt before, ever. It
yeah.
was never offered by our grandparents, our fathers, our bosses, our coaches. Like, that was just, it was not there. And there's still such a stigma around men like opening up and sharing. But when they do, and when I see that happening in the men's circles that I facilitate and in the coaching work that I do, it's like a flood, and it just creates this release and this relief and this freedom.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I got goosebumps thinking about it, but it's like
I love it.
they're yeah, it's a feeling that they've never felt before. So now when it happens to a partner, if you feel safe with your partner to do that, it's really easy to get stuck in that, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, opening that door and having that space held, and that can also, just cause, a dumping. I call it like like an emotional dump,
Yeah.
where that's what happens because, okay, I feel safe here, and just like with anything, if you do it too often, it's going to cause problems, right?
Yeah.
So bringing that to your partner, and just because it's safe, she's going to be like, okay, like, enough is enough. Like, go find something else, or it's gonna take away from that connection, that polarity, that feeling of I want you and I need you, and just
Right.
really that draw that magnetism together. So that's
Pushes.
where, yeah, and I mean, as a coach, you probably see this as well. We provide the space for people to come outside of their relationships, get the
Mhm.
tools, let go of their stuff, do that dumping. That's where, a counselor or a therapist or a coach, or, a men's group or women's group is so powerful, so that you can go back and you can take those tools back and be that leader, and still bring your emotions and everything that you have to bring into the relationship, the vulnerability, but it's not a space to bring that all the time and really just drag it down.
It allows the capacity within that individual to bring a healthier, more centered, with the tools version of themselves to the relationship. And I definitely, you just said it. It's like it's so rare. I've grown up close to my father and having a lot of guy friends, and I used to joke around when I was younger that I was always kind of one of the guys when I was, in like high school and a little bit after. I would say I have an even number both ways now, but when I was in that dynamic, even around the men, I think I enjoyed it because they were just more playful and like they would just joke around. It was very surface level. There was no like, it wasn't like, how are you doing today? Let's talk about how your heart's feeling, or like, are you being taken care of? Is there anything I can help you with? None of that, right? But I think I enjoyed that on some level because sometimes it got a little tiring being in these dynamics where people were just like gossiping, or it would turn into that, right? So, but nonetheless, very rarely did I see the men in these groups having these like real deep heart to hearts. And it would usually take a few drinks, or like it was a very maladapted pattern
Mm,
to get there, you know? So, very interesting and very true. And I see a lot of men just unnecessarily struggling because they don't
Yeah.
know that they don't have to do that. They don't have to live that way, you know?
Yeah, and like, I think you touched on it as well, that surface, living on the surface, and when that becomes all that you know, what are you supposed to do, right?
Right. Right.
If that's what you know, when you connect with other men, it's only on the surface, and it's fun, and it's joyful, it's playful, it's light. There's, the conversation isn't very deep.
Right.
Um, what happens when you're feeling not so well? Or you're going through a struggle, or you're, you know, whatever, you're struggling in some way, whether it's your personal, yourself, or your relationship, or with your children, or with your family. Where do you take that?
Right.
You've only been taught when you hang out with men, it's supposed to be fun and joyful and light and jokey and camaraderie. You've never been taught that it's okay to show vulnerability and hold space, because
Mm.
then you're going to be the outcast, right? So that's an interesting dynamic that many of us have grown up with.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because what I've noticed as well within my little, bubble of life, that because of that too, I think also that emotional piece with women is hard for men to kind of, like you said, hold space for because they don't know how to hold it for themselves. So
Hmm.
it's very
Yeah, and
interesting.
this is absolutely sorry. This is something that I've struggled with as well. Is when emotions, or anything that's brought up, that's any sort of depth has been brought to me, I got defensive because it felt like it was about me.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, I recognize that in my relationship. I recognize that in other areas too. And I don't know if you've read the book called The Four Agreements.
I have. It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, so it's one that I recommend to everyone. And the chapter of "Don't Take Things Personally" is one that I've had to read over 20 times, because the very first statement is, nothing that anyone says or does is about you. Right?
Exactly.
So, it's for me to recognize that, and even doing this work over the last 10 years, working on myself and going through my own journey, it's still such a powerful statement, and something that I have to work on every day. And that's like, when people bring something to me, it doesn't mean that it's about me. It's just how they're feeling and how they're interpreting it, and how what they're going through. It really has nothing to do with me. And the more that I can hold space for that, and you know, detach from it, and be like a safe space for them, the more it truly helps them heal,
Right.
but it also helps me as well.
Yeah, and through that co-regulation and through that experience, it allows us in those moments as humans to basically look in a mirror, because if somebody is stating something, sure, that's their version of reality, but you were a factor to that, right? So then you can really look at, what did I do to make this person come to these conclusions, and move maybe more consciously, but ultimately not holding on to the emotional attachment to it, right? And not holding on to
Mhm.
shame, but also taking ownership for your lot. And then at the same time, once you start building that capacity within yourself, you start to realize, like, these emotional reactions, this is where I'm at, and this is where I help my clients with, right? You're just a mirror. If you could just pretend that you're a mirror in that moment, like, just shut off every emotional thought that you have and just watch how somebody reacts. They're basically looking in a mirror, and the way that you're acting is making them react a certain way, which is their state of being. It's from their past, it's from their experiences, right? And there's so much to
Mhm.
learn from these moments. And sometimes it has completely nothing to do with you. You could just smile at someone, just go crazy on you, you know? So,
Yeah, and what's happening when when someone is saying something or sharing something with you, and it's bringing something up, if there's a feeling or if there's an emotion that shows up in you, they're your mirror as well.
Yeah.
They're mirroring to you
Yes.
what needs to be looked at, witnessed, and healed within yourself. And this is something that, is really, it's a tough one to really to grasp. But when you recognize it and understand it and look into where it's coming from and look in that mirror of yourself, that's where all the answers are.
Yeah, taking radical ownership for it instead of
Yes.
deflection, or, well, it was just that person having a bad day. That's what separates the growth from the stagnation, or the sometimes just not wanting to change or evolve, right? So I'm curious, Kevin, I would love to learn, what is a personal story within yourself? Because I know for me personally, why I do the work I do, there's a story there. So I'm so curious. I would love to know. I would love for you to share with us what you experience. Perhaps somebody listening can resonate, and maybe they'll learn from the journey that you went through as well.
Yeah, it's it's a story that I've shared quite often, and that's, I grew up, not talking about any of this stuff, right? Keeping up that image that everything was good on the outside, doing the best that I could to make sure that I was happy, that I was positive, and that got me far. Like, that, I don't want to ever discredit that, but that's how I live my life, right?
Mhm.
So even when I was in the darkest times or going through the greatest challenges, I was still positive in public. And I wore this mask of, like, the people pleaser, the nice guy. Everybody liked me, and this is something that I thrived on and I craved. And when I didn't, it was it was beating myself up, and not sleeping at night, or like overthinking all of the things that I could have done, should have done, or would have done, or would have said, or how
Right.
I'd never stood up for myself, right?
Yeah.
um but like I said, it got me far. I was a golf pro for 7 years. I met so many amazing people through that, and worked my way up in that, then transitioned into oil and gas and into business development, and then into upper management. So I was a very hard worker because I wanted to be liked, and I wanted people to see me and accept me and validate me.
Mm. That
But
part.
I wanted it
Yeah.
That part there, right, is like, I wanted that for me, them to see me, to validate me as who I was, but I was doing it by doing more, by working. Like, "Hey, look at how hard of a worker I am. Be proud of me," right?
Do
Like,
instead of
here's Yeah, and then being like, going and doing something, but, "Hey, look what I did," right? But recognizing that I was looking for that validation. And it was right around when I started. I was about 36 years old, and I was out of shape. I was closet smoking. I was, physically, mentally, emotionally unhealthy. I had started kind of like my spiritual journey. I went to a energy healer, and she told me that I was meant to do big things, and I was meant to help people, and I always felt like that. But I had no idea what she was talking about. So as I was kind of like in this moment, I wanted to start taking, better care of myself, and I started doing that. I started running and taking care of myself, and I started to see some physical changes, but then I recognized areas where, I wasn't things weren't aligning in my life, in my career, in my marriage, and that's when everything kind of when I got clear,
Mhm.
everything in my life looked like it was total chaos, and it was, right?
That's how
Going
it
through
is. Yeah.
yes, going through separation and divorce, and recognizing that I wasn't happy in my job, and leaving it, and transitioning into something else. So, and on the outside, there was so many people that are like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was like,
Because
"I actually."
they're not used to people kind of like shaking things up.
Mhm. Yeah. So it was like, I'm actually clearer than
Yeah.
I ever felt in my life,
Yeah.
even though like I left my marriage and
I run
met
space.
someone who was, yeah, like met the person who I never ever thought that I would meet, but changed my whole outlook on what unconditional love was and what the books and the stories and the poems and the movies were all written for, which I had never understood.
Oh
So it
my gosh,
was,
I
yeah,
love
it was
that.
like it was like
You
this mind blowing. What's that? Sorry.
you allowed space for it. You essentially realigned with what your truth was, which removed all the things that you weren't aligned with. And that process sucks. It's not
Mhm.
easy, but it's worth the work. And then once you allow that space, these things just come in, you know.
Yeah. And ultimately what happened is I had built this reputation of being who I was, but essentially it was a shell of who
Ah,
I was. You know, I was still a good person. I
yeah,
wanted to be the best. I wanted to treat people with respect and kindness and love, and I still do, and I always did. But I wanted to do it from an authentic space and, start living my own life. And I definitely hurt some people along the way. And on society's level, what I did was not the way that, if I could go back and change that, I definitely would, but then I wouldn't have learned the lessons, right? So
I
so
hear
I
you.
I apologize for kind of like getting a roundabout way to getting to the point of this. Like you said, the
Nope.
moment when I realized that I knew that I what I wanted to do was, I started to reconnect with people that had been out of my life for years, because I started to think back, going like, do I even have any real friends right now? Because I've
Mm,
never been real enough with anyone to let
yeah.
them know who I am or what I'm going through, nor have I asked them,
Yes.
right?
This is gold.
So I started,
Yeah.
yeah, so I started to go back and go, who are my closest people in my life and the times in my life? So I started to make a list of that, and I just started to reach out and connect with them.
I love
And I connected with one of my friends, and we went out for lunch. And I hadn't hung out with him in like 20 years. And he asked me how it was going, and I was like, you know what? It's not going that good. And this is what's going on, and this is what I'm going through, and the challenges and everything. And he held space for it,
oh gosh. I love
right?
it so much.
And
So much.
when I kind of like told a little bit of my story, he's like, "Oh man," he's like, "Me too. This is where I'm struggling. This is what I'm going through, and this is whatever." And I'm just like, "What?" I would have never thought, because on the outside looking in, he's got the perfect life and the perfect wife and the perfect family, and it's just like, it was like that was the game changer for me. I knew that conversations like that needed to be in my life from then forward. And now, like, surface level conversations for me, I can't do it. Like, and that's what I live my life doing, coming through sales and business development, and
Right.
just, surface level society, which is so many of us live in, and that's what we've been programmed to do,
Yeah.
because we're afraid of not being accepted for who we are. And it's surprising just how much you actually are when you open up.
What's beautiful is you're leading by example because you're not afraid to live in that way, right? And it's funny you mentioned that. I was out the other day just talking like myself, and someone's like, "That was deep." I'm like, "This is just how I talk." Okay.
I
I
went
was
with
of the
I went on a
book.
men's. Oh, sorry, I kept cutting you off there.
You're good. What were you saying?
I went on a golf trip with some new friends. Actually, it was one of my friends who I reconnected with after 20 years. He invited me to a golf trip with his buddies, and one of the guys asked me what I did for work, and I told him a little bit. I was in coaching, and mostly men, and he said, "Oh, what made you get into that?" And I was like, "Well, um, I cheated on my wife and left my marriage, and was, left my job and everything, and throughout all of that challenge, I really found myself and wanted to dig deep into why I was the way I was, and why I made the mistakes that I made, and how I didn't want to be this way any further, and hurt people and hurt myself." And he was just like, what? He's like, I can't believe you just told me that. Like you said that you cheated and all this stuff. And he's like, man, I did that too. But he's like, I didn't know that you. I can't believe you even just like said that like out of the blue, like so openly and freely. And I'm like, well, I said that's how I own my story and
I love
I
it.
take full responsibility for it, right?
Yeah.
I don't condone it, but it's just it's not me. It's just a part of my story, right? So, but he was like he was completely blown away with how open I was, and that's something that I've recognized is maybe a superpower, but also too it definitely filters out who's meant to be in your life. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like before you really step fully into this path, that is something people need to be aware of, right? Because you're going to want to just be authentic and vulnerable, and it's going to feel uncomfortable to be on the surface level. Like, it's just not going to fit anymore, right? But you're going to run into a lot of people who aren't comfortable with themselves yet. And it's the mirror thing. You just have to
Yeah.
understand that people don't always react in a positive way when you are not afraid to be vulnerable and open. And that's okay. And really just accepting people where they're at too. But also, how beautiful is that? I mean, even if somebody doesn't react and they kind of keep that shell, like you mentioned earlier, that I think a lot of people have. And they have these thoughts in between what they're showing you and what they're actually thinking, right? Even if you're showing them and kind of leading by example, you're planting those seeds. And if it's somebody who really wants to grow and evolve, they're really paying attention, and they're eventually going to want to go in that direction too, should they choose. So
Hmm.
good for
Yeah.
you. I love
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Planting seeds is something that's come up a lot, and just like that, I mean, it's kind of like that's one of those old cliche statements, right? But it's been coming a lot in other conversations that I've been having too. So I appreciate you saying that as well. But it's so true. The planting of the seeds
Yeah.
is where where the growth begins.
Yeah, and I've been on the receiving end of it. I've been around people who showed me things that I was not privy to in this lifetime. I've been around somebody who struggled with severe trauma and deep addiction issues, and I only read about it or saw it on TV before. I never really had close friends or anyone in my life who embodied what that healing process looks like. So when I actually was exposed to it, it made me feel uncomfortable. I had I had reactions that I maybe at the time didn't vocally say to the world, like, hey guys, I want you to know this is how I feel. But it's a part of being human, right? It's a part of us all.
Hmm.
And because I experienced those things, I have expanded my heart and compassion too. It's just, we don't know what we don't know, and just being open.
Totally.
So,
Yeah. I read this book just recently. It's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by
mm,
Debbie Ford. And
mm.
I've read two of her books, and both of them are like
This sounds
mind
amazing.
expanding. Yeah, one is called Why Good People Do Bad Things, and that was probably one of the biggest game changers in my life, that book alone. But then I just read this book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which is was
Love this.
actually her first book, the one
Yeah.
before. But in there she speaks to embracing those shadows. And for those that don't know, the shadows are the emotions, the traumas, the everything that we're keeping buried within us that are affecting us in some way, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's whether it's emotionally, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, whether it's how we react in our daily lives. And she speaks to being able to like go in and shed light on those shadows and what we're ashamed of. Go in find that and see that and embrace that, because if you don't, it's going to have this hold on you. It's going to continue to hold you, and it's going to affect you in many other ways. So whether it's shame, fear, guilt, sadness, trauma,
Yeah.
anger, rage, whatever that is, we have to go in and find where those are coming from and express those and get them out or they're going to continue to just anchor us down and keep us stuck where we're at.
Absolutely. If a man were to see this podcast and they see the title and they want to watch because they're drawn in, and they hear our conversation up to now, and they're wondering, okay, I sound a lot like this person who has a shell and who's living an inauthentic life and who can't cry, and they were to reach out to you right now in this moment and say, hey, Kevin, I'm speaking on their behalf, essentially. What would you tell them? Like, how would you recommend that they move in a more healthy, more conscious, more heart-centered way so that they can lead a more fulfilling life?
There's a couple things I would say. Find a men's group. Find a men's group that has consistent circles that are connected, where it's men connecting, they're opening up, they're talking about whatever. At this point, I would say if that's where you're at, just find a space where there's men supporting men.
Beautiful.
If not, if you don't have that, or if you don't know where to find that, reach out and ask, look for a coach or a mentor. I've been through therapy and counseling. It's got its space, but there's nothing like men supporting other men. There's absolutely nothing like it. And I will take that to my grave when men are supported and they see that they're not alone with what they're going through. And I'm telling you, I've facilitated circles with men from all over the world, and every single one of us feels the same things. And that's the power of emotion, is they're universal. And there's no difference between happiness and sadness. There's no difference between anger and joy. Those are their emotions, and they're meant to be felt. And the only way to actually truly get them out is to express them. So I would say the number one thing is ask yourself why I'm feeling this way. And if you're willing to ask yourself that question, reach out and find someone. And this is something I've seen, this because it is Men's Mental Health Month. I've seen so many people in our space, the coaching space, saying, reach out. And even businesses and business owners and leaders saying, reach out. That's not just to be said, right? And how many of those leaders and the business owners and the coaches and mentors, myself included, are actually reaching out when they're struggling, right? Because that's one thing that I've recognized is, as a leader, it can be a lonely place at the top. And a lot of times it's like, well, who do I reach out to? I'm the one that everyone else reaches out to.
So important. Yes.
Right? So it's like, this is not just for your people that you are taking care of, that you're leading. It's for you too. This is for everyone. So
you are not exempt. Exactly. Yeah. Huge point there. And I keep hearing you say that these men groups are so vital and so important. And obviously I'm not a man, and I do not experience these same dynamics. So I am curious, what exactly do you guys do in these circles? What's it like? Maybe even share something if you are open to that, and if there's no confidentiality issues, like an experience.
Absolutely.
Potentially that was so moving, that could maybe help others understand what exactly happens there.
Well, we strip down to our underwear and we run around and have pillow fights and
That's on the last day, guys. No, I'm joking.
No, it's the men's groups, confidentiality, number one. So I have a set of ground rules, and I learned this. I actually took men's facilitation training through an organization called Sacred Sons that used to have an online platform where they had multiple men's circles and stuff like that. So number one is confidentiality. That's what makes it safe and sacred. Beautiful. Right? So I encourage men, share the experience. share this work, share how you felt, what you got out of the experience, and let's grow this this movement, right? But absolutely do not share another man's story.
I love
That's that's his story to share. So it's so that's the number one rule in the circles.
in
We
Fight
talk
Club.
about
We don't talk about Fight Club.
exactly. That's right. Yeah. So, we start with a check-in and checking in with it could be an intention. It could be what are you bringing into the circle? What are you wanting to let go of? What is it, what is it that's on your heart? Like what's alive in you in this moment, right?
Beautiful.
And depending on how many people there are, it could be one word or it could be a little bit deeper. And then after the check-ins, when every man is checked in, we'll do a little bit of breathing, right? Just to kind of like calm the energy, get centered. And then I like to open the floor and be like, you know what? I don't want to I always have prompts that we can talk about, that we can discuss, whether it's, success or, fatherhood or anything that we're going through, right?
Right.
But I like to open the floor first for men that are there for something that they need to get out that maybe not be tied to a prompt or a theme.
I like that.
And the floor is open for anyone to bring anything. And that's what I share with them too, is like anything and everything is welcome. So bring all of you. And this is where it's left. So like when we talked about, dumping on your partner or getting into the habit of like dumping in your relationship, this is a place where we dump it, and we dump it into the proverbial fire, and we burn it and let it go. And it's such a powerful experience, and it truly just needs to be felt, to be understood. And we've had some men come into the circles. I had one man, he came to the circle and he said that he'd been afraid to do something like this and connect with other men for 2 years. He'd been sitting, wanting connection. And finally, after 2 years, he joined the circle, and he's been there for about 2.5 months now. And he said it's changed his life in so many ways that he just can't even understand. And he's only been coming like twice a month.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy. I love this.
Yeah, it's super powerful. So so I have a free monthly circle online in the Heart Warriors men's group that I facilitate, that I created just before COVID. And then one in-person group here in Alberta, Canada, Grand Prairie, where I live, for the local men to get together in person, because there is such power in that in person. And then I just created, actually tonight is going to be the first night of our new membership. It's called the Warrior Within. So it's the next level up, where we gather every single week. We have protocols each week that we're going to work through based on themes every month. And it's men that are showing up to do the work together, gain the tools, the skills, the knowledge, the wisdom, and support each other through actual doing this inner work, making themselves better in every way. And it's I'm looking forward to getting this started.
Gosh, I'm so happy you're doing this work. Like, I'm not a man, but I can sense how powerful this is. Like, just thank you. And
thank you.
I want to touch a bit on the somatic piece, right? Like, for women, we're taught it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to, show these things. So, and not all women have that ability. We all have different dynamics that we grow up into, and we have more of that masculine, stoic personality, or vice versa, the other way. But in our bodies, our emotions get trapped in there. And when we have a safe space, whether it's a therapist, a coach, or a group like that is powerful. Considering that it's literally an unheard of dynamic. I mean, I want every guy I know to be a part of that. But yeah, it's like, think of it as literally releasing all of this pent up emotion that's just stuck inside your body. It's lying dormant. And there's so much research that's it's been done for years, but no one really talks about the somatic piece. And at least they've started to get a little bit more trendier lately as of what 2020. People are talking more on the somatic, releasing things more from your body versus talk therapy. And what you're doing is such a gift because
Mm,
these emotions, if they don't go anywhere, they turn into disease. They turn into mental illness. They turn into just chaos, literally, in your world. So, kudos to you
absolutely.
for
Thank you.
allowing that. Hell yeah. I freaking love what you're doing. Like, we need to scream louder. We need to get these men to hear your message. And
and that's a practice in itself, screaming,
yeah,
yelling, letting go of that rage. We hosted a men's retreat here a couple of years ago, up in Canada, and we had 12 guys, and we went and did all sorts of somatic release and techniques like sacred confrontation and combat, where it's men facing each other in the circle with other men around, like battling each other out, but doing it in a conscious way, where it's like, yeah, you're trying to win and you're trying to defeat the other guy, but there's just so much mutual respect. But it teaches you how to defend yourself, how to stand up for yourself, but also accept that maybe somebody just has that much more skills or knowledge or tools that you need to work on, or that you can work on, and they're there with it. Yeah, it's super powerful. And one of the things that we did was we stood on the mountaintop and screamed as loud as we could, and it was one of the most powerful experiences. And I recommend it to everyone, and I do it
God,
all the time because, yeah, it's super powerful.
that sounds so powerful. I'm like, I need a mountain to climb. Wow, that is
Totally.
cool. I love that.
Yeah, it was
So
super powerful.
you've mentioned briefly, just in general, that you have met now somebody who you have a healthier relationship with. And I'm, for me, and I perhaps you resonate with this, once I really got to a point where I was able to be more vulnerable and be more authentic and really heal a lot of these things that I didn't know, or I wasn't facing. My entire life changed for the better, and my relationships changed for the better. And I'm curious if you had a similar thing. Like my mom, for instance, growing up, all we did was fight, and she's actually one of my best friends now. You know, so those little things I just love sharing because I want
Of
people to
course.
understand what's on the other side of it and how beautiful life is, right?
Mhm. Well, and I will say that the relationships in my life I lost because the majority of mine were very surface level. When I
Mhm.
started to be more real and open, and even like sharing stuff online and talking about my life and my story, um,
Mhm.
I realized how many real relationships that I had in my life, including my family, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of that started to fade away. But what it did, and I think I spoke to this earlier, is it filtered out the ones that were meant to be in my life, and the relationships that I create now just by being real and authentic. And I speak to this. It's actually 11:11 here, so it's a sign that we're on the right path, you and I.
I
But
love it.
one one of the things that I've recognized here over this last year and a half specifically, because since we moved cities, is how many amazing people are coming into my life that are just real, authentic,
Mhm.
open, and honest. And I feel like that's because that's how I'm leading as well. And it's super powerful, but it's also equally hard because there's a lot of people that don't want to see you like that, and the way that you are right now or in the past is someone that they benefited from,
Mhm.
and you might have fit that mold so that you kept them and so that they were accepting of you and all of that stuff, but they're accepting of a version of you that's not truly you. So essentially they're not loving you, they're not accepting you, they're accepting a shell or a masked version of you. So it's something that yeah, it's amazing. It's super powerful, but it's definitely not easy.
Yeah, yeah, I like to call it an unraveling
Mm,
because there are, when you share something on social media, things can be misconstrued, or it's really hard to explain very uh, intricate dynamics in a simple way, right? But
mhm.
this whole process is really an unraveling. And if you confront it that way, when you get to a point where you do have to face more of these hardships, where you hit kind of a roadblock and have to look in the mirror, or you notice these relationships weren't what you truly hoped they were, and you have to truly grieve that and release it and just accept it, it won't knock you down nearly as hard, because on the other side of that, you can still love these people. You don't have to have a war or create drama because of it, right? You can still send them love and still wish them peace,
Mhm.
even if you're not immediately in their world or reality. But on the other side of that, it's you literally, like you mentioned you're like a magnet for the life that you actually deserve, because you're
Yeah.
finally able to stand in that authentic fiber and to use your authentic voice in a more intentional and conscious way. And you get to really create and stand in your power more. And what happens after that, it's nothing less than magical. I mean, there's really no, there's a it feels magical, when you've lived your whole
Mhm.
life kind of locked up in this shell, and then suddenly everything just seems so effortless. You
Yeah.
know? It feels magical, but it's truly just you finally found your voice, your power, your heart, your soul, right?
Yeah. It's something for me is like you finally get to like let go of all of everything. Like you've been hanging on to gripping on to like so hard. Like you're in a storm and you're just hanging on to your tent or your jacket and it's like trying to blow away. And you finally just let go and it blows away and all of a sudden the sun comes out and goes, "Hey, we've been waiting for you."
I'm like, "Man, this feels good."
Right? Oh, that sun is nice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, "Where have you been my whole life?"
Mhm. Well, and one thing that I wanted to touch on too, like you were just speaking to it about the relationships and sending people love and that's where I'm at too. It's not to say that I haven't been faced with challenge and showed up in ways where I'm not super proud of. And I've reacted and I've responded and I've said and
Yeah.
done things where, that's not my highest self. But I needed to do that to be able to understand that that's not who I was and that's not how I wanted to continue. But also too, the people that were in my life that aren't anymore, I still love them for who they are and what they brought to me in that time and help me recognize that that's not what I wanted and that's not who I was. But I needed them in my life to recognize that going forward. So to say that I hate them or I'm disappointed or I'm upset that they're in my life for what they did, I really can only be grateful, even though it's a challenge to get to that point. But it's just the truth. I wouldn't know what I know now if I didn't go through that with them. And that's all of them, even the ones that were created the greatest challenge and chaos.
I resonate with that as well. And a part of that is really just the deprogramming, right? Like, we do live in a fear-based world, and our narratives are very polarizing. And a lot of the ways that people communicate just on the surface level, it's actually a very heavy, stressful, fearful way to live,
Mhm.
And when you disconnect from that, it's almost like you're fighting against, because neuroplasticity, you're fighting against that version of yourself, and you know it's not really who you are anymore, but and there are gonna be moments of weakness where you do react and you regret and you look back, and sometimes you do it and you don't even realize, like, until later on, right? But it's all part of the process, and having grace with yourself, I think, is huge for sure. And really, I look back too at some of the people I had some of the biggest chaotic rifts with, I suppose. And I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be as compassionate as I am today. I wouldn't really be as strong as I am today if I hadn't have endured some of those losses, some of that pain. And I do believe I could have maneuvered a lot more consciously, which is why I think, you and I gravitate towards being a coach so we can help people do that and avoid a lot of that, right? So,
Yeah, and that's one of the ultimate goals for me was um, to catch people before they hit their rock bottom,
yeah.
right? And that's rock bottom looks so different for everybody, but there's a moment comes where it's like I want to stop doing what I'm doing and make a change. But for many, they have to go through that and to hit that point and not have anyone there to support them and guide them through. That's where a lot of people just end and stop. It stops. They think that there's no other way. When it's, I mean, you and I are talking living beings that it does get better. There is a way through, and really it starts with just looking in the mirror and having that support system as well. And that's again that's why I do what I do, is because I know what it's like to have a support system, and I've built that up now where I can reach out and talk to multiple people about multiple things, no matter what's going on in my life, and they're there to hold space for me just as I am for them.
Very beautiful. Well, thank you so much for the work you do, Kevin. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And I probably thanked you 20 times already, but and I'll probably, thank you 20 more. So be prepared. But I would love for you to also share before we part ways today how whoever's listening, let's say they resonate or they know someone, or maybe they themselves really are like, I like this dude. I want to reach out to him. I want to be part of this movement. How can they get a hold of you? What do you have going on? Well, you mentioned already a bit of that, but let's talk about how they can get a hold of you and what your ideal client is.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So Kevin McNee, that's MCNEE, at Kevin underscore Heart Warriors on Instagram. So, and then the Heart Warriors has an Instagram page as well. That's where I'm most active. I do have a website that's coming back online here soon, and I can add that as well. My ideal client, I have two. And this is something that I've been wrestling over, being like, so many coaches and mentors that I've worked with are like, you need to have your avatar client and whatever. But I have two, and one is that man that is feeling like there's no other way. There's no way out. They don't know what to do. They can't afford to do, to invest in themselves. They just feel the world crashing down on them, and they're looking for a space to be supported. And that's what I've created the Warrior Within for. It's a monthly membership, but it's a weekly container where we connect every single week and we do the work together. It's based on 4 different protocols every week, where we go through the initiation week 1, the shadow week 2, the edge week 3, and then breath work in week 4. And that's the process every month based on individual themes. So those are the clients, that's for every man, but it's affordable, it's consistent, it's very connected, and we're actually making a difference. This isn't just for, men to kind of just dump their shit and leave. This is like, dump your shit, let's grab my toolkit, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to attack life, and I'm going to, kick it in the balls with my, by standing up for myself, right? So that's client number one. Client number two, it's been the ones that I've been working with mostly, and that's the ones that have it all. The successful leaders, the high achievers, the business owners, the entrepreneurs that are successful in every way, but they feel like there's something missing in their heart, and they just need to connect, and they want to connect to their heart and lead and create something that has meaning and purpose and drive, and just like connect to something more and deeper, like there is, spirituality and connectedness, and that's who's really been showing up a lot for me. So that's why I say I have two different types of clients, and really, what's been showing up for me is a lot of women, and they're going, hey, we hear you too, and I resonate with your message, and they're the ones that have had to be more in their masculine because there's not enough men, or their men in their life aren't showing up as the conscious masculine leaders that they would crave them to be. So now they're the ones that are doing everything and taking on that masculine leadership role. And it's one that they don't want to continue playing. They want to be able to like be that divine feminine
and relax and not have to take care of everything all the time.
Yeah, like be my king. Like I want to be the queen, and I want to just relax and be served and loved on and adored for the goddess that I am. And they've never had somebody that will listen to them and hold space for them and see them for who they truly are, and create that safety to let their walls down. And that's been showing up for me too. So I would say healing the wounded masculine in men and women is ultimately what's been showing up. And men kind of like I feel like we need the most work, and I'm going to put myself in there as well. So we need the most work, so I'm going to focus on them. But the women definitely want that support as well.
I am going to suggest, and I'd be happy to help you with this, you need a dating site. You need these men that are healing with these women that are like, I've never had this before.
That's so funny, because Kelly and I, my partner, we made a list of like all of our friends that are like amazing people, men and women, and like we should have like a dating a speed dating night or something. Yeah, it would be kind of fun.
Yeah, it's so cool. I love the work you're doing. It's beautiful, and I also resonate with the people you attract. So thank you again. I appreciate you. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to share with the collective?
Something that I was just thinking about too is for the ladies out there that are listening to this as well. It's holding space for a man when he opens up is not an easy thing to do. But when you do, just be aware. And that's one thing that I just wanted to, it came up as I was speaking there, and when you asked. So it's like there's a lot of ladies and females that have been reaching out saying like, where are all the men? Where are all the awake men, the consciously aware men? They're out there, and there's more that are going to be showing up by doing this work, with myself and the other men's leaders. And there's many that I'm connected with as well that have their own spaces and programs and groups. We're coming, and it's going to be amazing. But be ready and just be willing to listen and accept them for who they are, because it's not that easy sometimes.
Very beautifully articulated. And I appreciate you, Kevin. Thank you for your heart and for your work. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.